Hey everyone, Marcus Tenlo here. I want to understand the world and what it means and what it entails and what's going to happen. And these are important questions. And they're questions that we need to keep circulating in our minds because the world is increasingly in a dystopian and terrible state. Some people aren't clued to it. Some people don't get the inkling of that. They're interested in their own business, their families, and they think things will go on quite well forever. It won't. There are signs of breakage, there are signs of things going wrong, and I want to expand on those things because climate breakdown is something that is really happening. And although there are so many things manifested in the world that are already a travesty, most humans aren't clued to that. They don't care. So, are you one of the people that don't care? I don't regard myself as an expert on, social conditions and geopolitics, etc. I'm going to link a few so-called experts in the description because these will be you'll be able to look up and follow just for updates. And I have to verify to myself whether they are accurate and fair reporters on the situation. So just, it's kind of disclaimer at this point. But being a very empirical and heuristic kind of learner, I think it's important for me to discuss and to entertain the ideas of from based on what I already know about the world. So I put together three key questions. The first question is, what direction is society headed based on energy and power profiles? So although I believe that the United States of America is going down the gurgler, that is a generalization that indicates that China is going to go ahead and become the world's greater superpower and be more responsible at that. And I do hope that will happen. It will be at the detriment of many of the American people. But with the conflict in the Middle East and the American military presence around the world, I have a significant amount of doubt that the US will take things like like a fair person would. They will rebel and they will fight against their downfall, and I'm looking for setbacks as a result of that. So the world is moving slowly towards dystopia, slowly but surely, still causing a great amount of suffering to animals and to minorities and those displaced. It's interesting to look someone else in the eye and think of their ignorance on various matters. Many people don't take the real issues seriously, and I'm ignorant in some ways too. I'm wise in a number of ways that I am aware of and try to capitalize on those, but seriously, people are deluded. I guess we can dig further into the recent history of the world and ask questions like, who exactly voted Trump in? We can look at the common good person in society and ask questions like, to what extent will they be willing to enact self-sacrifice, like not have kids, in order to make the world better? Because it could also be not just the rich elite who are causing our demise. It could be something within the average person that is part of the cause of destruction. So we've got to look at all those things on a large scale. So we've got more than 8 billion humans on this planet who are essentially the power brokers. Okay, next question. What's the potential and the worst case scenario? Under what conditions or tensions would that happen? Because my own belief, my own suspicion is that there's a lot of potential for AI to do great evil, and it only needs an evil person to actually enact that. Now, let's put it plainly, Donald Trump, I wouldn't call him evil. I'd call him more maniacal and stupid, and I'm not sure if he's evil. And as much as I despise the guy, I can't classify him as being as evil as he possibly could be, which is a worry. Looking at tools like the government's law, the constitution that they have, the police and National Guard forces, that sort of thing. Looking at things like Elon Musk's Neuralink, which has the power to change people's brains literally. looking at the vulnerabilities of the US government, what they are turning themselves into, which is probably monsters. So let me derive from personal experience. I was an involuntary mental health client for more than for about 20 years. So I understand that authority can drain you of your energy and your spirit. That's what happened to me. And it's what I believe will happen on a grand scale. People will not just be disrespected, they will be abused, they will be neglected, and they will be uh, caused to suffer. And possibly because, not only because the authorities don't care, but because they're willing to enact and inflict punishment upon people which is completely needless. So all the things that we take for granted, like our smartphones, our access to the internet, our social media, our friends that we form from that, all the things that give the lower classes any degree of power. The question is, why wouldn't the upper classes take that away? They take those powers away from the lower classes, and in many cases they try to do that and succeed. So in other words, the mature stage of capitalism, in my opinion, could well be not only the oligarchy, but actually depriving the great masses of the actual access and rights to such things as technology. And by that I mean a technology ownership, so we can't own smartphones. The public surveillance will still be there. The military will still have control over the vast tracts of land and the strata of the entire earth. And it would be a borderline decision whether people would die and cease to exist simply out of the oligarchs' decision making, or they would be required to keep living and to suffer and possibly be exploited for their work abilities or something. So whilst we think that capitalism is the evil of the world, and it is, there's a worse stage beyond that, which is the return to slavery. And then, of course, the exaction of suffering. So someone actually intends to cause you suffering. That is all sorts of potential. See, human existence and animal existence is pretty fickle. So it takes only a few things to make us feel bad about our life, okay? And over a long period of time, that consolidates. So whilst we're living through what we might think a hell, there are many worse things that can happen. And so not even the slightest bit of discontent is good. I agree with that. But if my parents, for example, are anything of a benchmark to go by, my understanding is that there are a lot of people out there, including Donald Trump, who don't care about you and will happily see and experience and witness you living a life of mediocrity and suffering just because they have what they need. They have the comforts, the luxuries, and the privilege that you don't have. So this leads to my third question, I guess, which is, what, if any, glue is holding good, fair, and reasonable thinking and people together? I must say not very much. My experiences on social media attest to the fact that there are a couple of people in my friends group and my followers that actually care significantly about me as a person. So if that's any indication, I would say that the gel or the glue that holds together good people is not very strong. I mean, seriously, if the power is contained in the elites, okay, then there might be tribes of really good people who understand the concepts and the issues, and they want to reformulate the earth. They can't, because there's a stronghold on the power and the technology and the military that are held by the elites. And whilst I don't really believe in Lord of the Flies, there will be a situation like that where the evil or very roguish tribe has everything, and there are a couple of people outside that proportionally who are trying to make things better. These couple of good people don't have any power, and they're essentially going to be lost and remain as outcasts in the society. So, broadly speaking, whilst I've been advocating for depopulation of the human species for a few years now, one of the real dangers that we are facing is, in fact, depopulation occurring on a massive scale involuntarily. Yeah, there's a push for overpopulation at the moment, and people are procreating the hell out of themselves because there is space left for that sort of thing to happen. But seriously, in 50 or 100 years' time, it may actually boil over and people will be less important. They won't have their human rights, and depopulation will happen of its own accord in a very tyrannical way. And it will certainly not be a matter for me to keep on advocating for depopulation because it's already happening on a very large scale. I hope my advice will not age badly in that way. I hope that in 100 years, my message that people should not be breeding will remain somewhat relevant. But I fear that if people do breed, people will die even quicker and be of a very trashy and pretty much worthless kind of status in the eyes of the oligarchy and the technocracy. So, final words, I don't think the worst case scenario will actually play out in the realistic sense. We need to be mindful of, the worst case scenario, but it's not what's likely to happen. What's likely to happen is something above the worst case, okay, which is still horrible for so many. So our morale, our spirit, what we learned at school maybe, what we learned from ourselves and empirically and reflecting on our life and our friends and our idealism as well, such as my living modelling ideals. All these things may create a world which is heaven on earth, but I'm not hopeful for that at the moment. I'm not very realistic that that will happen. And so it requires us to maintain a constant vigilance on the state of the world and to keep on keeping ourselves updated. But I hope this video has given you an idea of the possibilities and the reality of living in 2025. Thank you very much. Bye.